What's the deal, man?
What's going on, man?
Who is Icon?
Icon. I'm a artist, father, son. Just an all good guy.
When did you realize you had like this God-given talent to be the artist that you are?
Oh man, it was like at 5 years old, I was drawing from like children's books, just copying children's books, coloring books without even tracing, just like on pieces of paper. I would take like my mother's bills and just draw like graffiti on her bills, like at 5 years old, just like little cartoon characters and whatnot.
What was your first form of art like before what you're doing now?
Yeah, it was cartoon characters. Like I love Bugs Bunny. I love like Dr. Seuss children books. So I would just like try to copy the characters the best way I could. And then when I got about say like 7 or 8, I would take I had like Batman coloring books, Spider-Man color books, and I would trace them just to get an idea how the lines would work. I just had that mindset like when I was younger, but I was like tracing those characters. And that helped me to get my anatomy down pat a little bit. And then from there, my uncle, he saw that I had an interest in art. So he would teach me the basics as far as like my anatomy, having confidence in my line, and just like shading, like, little simple things just to get me going as an artist.
So you started off using like pencils or crayons?
Nah,
first?
pencils. Yeah, definitely pencils.
You were born in Brooklyn, right?
Yeah, I was born in the East New York section of Brooklyn until I was about 7 years old. My moms and pops, they wanted to get me out of the project, so we moved over to Staten Island. For a couple of years, I lived in Staten Island. My mother and father eventually divorced, like when I was like 12 years old. My mom's bounced from Staten Island. We moved to Long Island, Roosevelt, Long Island, to be exact.
How did Roosevelt, Long Island contribute to like your development as an artist?
I think it was like a little different than living in the 5 boroughs because there was like a lot of greenery, the fresh air, no smog or anything like that. So I could focus on just doing art, basically. There wasn't a lot of distractions. You weren't like on top of people like in the projects or like an apartment building where I was in Staten Island. So there was a lot of room to grow because I had like my own house, my mom's and my brother at the time.
When did you start to get into specifically New York style graffiti?
Man, it's probably like when I was in Roosevelt, Long Island, I had a kid, a Jamaican kid actually from Brooklyn. I think he's from Bed-Stuy. My boy Stranger 156. He came out to the island. At the time, I was doing bubble letters, but they weren't like, really good. I was just starting out into graffiti. That was like in the early 80s probably. So like he would come over to the crib. We befriended each other. He would come over to the crib every day. And instead of playing football, we just practice on letters. And from after doing the letters, we would practice with spray cans. And that's where I really got into graffiti.
So who was your influences when it comes to the bubble letters? I think it was Phase One was your biggest influence when it comes to bubble letters?
Nah, I was more like Shirt King Fade because he was doing it on the t-shirts. So that's where I got into the bubble letters. But that was like later on in the 80s. But the beginning part, I was more so into just freestyling. And I got that from CWK crew, the Kraftwerk Kings. That was Gemini and Gnome.
So who are your biggest influences growing up when it comes to this graffiti? Be specific, name who you're gonna name.
Yeah, as far as characters, I would have to say Gemini and Gnome with the graffiti from the Mantronics covers and the Just Ice covers where they're doing like the characters in the party scenes and stuff like that. That helped shape how I was gonna start doing characters. And then in Freeport, Long Island, there was a brother by the name of DC3 from the Destiny's Children. And he had like, he was the first one I saw that had characters with like real skinny legs, like skinny jeans before skinny jeans was really popping. So he kind of influenced the look as far as doing graffiti on the wall, probably.
You're talking old school.
Yeah, real old school. Like we used to straight like our pants back in the days. Like, so I guess his characters kind of correspond with what we were doing at the time, basically.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Mantronics was a hip hop group from, I believe, the Tito Rockin' was down, I believe like 83 to like 86, 7 before Mantronics like did like a lot of the singing stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I believe Tito Rock was like
the MC.
Yeah, MC like 1983.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, just Google Mantronics and Just Ice
Yeah.
and the artwork you'll see on
You see that
the
Jimmy,
album
yeah, the
covers.
Kraftwerk Kings, yeah.
So you mentioned Fade,
Yeah.
and Fade is part of the Shirt Kings crew
Yeah.
or Shirt Kings collective. When did you become part of the Shirt Kings?
Man, I was going to school in '86 at the School of Visual Arts, SVA, and I used to. First, I was staying in Brooklyn my first 2 years. Unfortunately, my grandfather passed, so I had to move back to Long Island. So on my way to Long Island, I would take the train to Queens, and I would stop at the Coliseum, and I used to get my sneakers there. And one day, I just happened to go down to the lower part,
Like the Coliseum in Queens.
Yeah, Jamaica Ave. So I went down. I would go. Well, let me start back. Professor Griff from Public Enemy used to teach me the martial arts, and he knew interest in arts, and he was like, "Yo, you need to check out these cats, the Shirt Kings." I was like, "Yeah, I know what they're doing, but I do my own characters." So he started laughing at me. He was like, "Yo, you need to check out these brothers, man. They really doing it. They're into like hip hop. You need to check them out." So I was like, "All right." So one day,
You mean Professor Griff was teaching you martial arts?
Yeah. He was teaching me basic kung fu. Yeah, he had a system called Shabazz Temple Boxing. Like he would take all the young kids in the neighborhood and like teach them martial arts for like little or nothing, man. Like he really gave back to the community. He was a good dude.
How did you approach the Shirt Kings? Because the Shirt Kings are like the leaders in hip hop art. Like, when did you like approach them? Were you scared, or did you like say, "Hey, Fade, can you just look at my joints"? How did you do it? How did you have the courage?
Nah, well, I guess like I didn't really talk to Fade at first. It was mainly Kashim, King Kashim. God bless the dead. He passed a couple of years ago.
Who's King Kashim?
He was one of the founders of the Shirt Kings. He was like dope, man. His colors, his control of the airbrush is like, and then he had a sense of humor too. He was like a cool dude. Like he was smart. He'd be smart mouth at times, but he's like a cool dude. So I would ask him a bunch of questions. And I remember one day he cracked on me. He's like, "Yo, why are you asking me all these questions, man?" And everybody started busting out. I started laughing, but I would just keep coming back, just asking questions. But like I knew how to airbrush at a basic level, because when I was like 16, there was an older gentleman out in Freeport, Long Island, that had a silkscreen shop. I walked into his shop. He was like, "Yo, do you want to learn how to airbrush?" So I had like a basic understanding, but I didn't have flavor like the Shirt Kings, basically. So I would just hang around these guys, and then they took a liking to me over time. Kashim decided to branch out from Jamaica Ave, and he relocated to Freeport, Long Island, and I started working under him. And that's where I started, getting the skills.
So when did you meet Fade?
No, I met Fade at the same time. Fade was there, but Fade was always in and out because he had his celebrity clientele from like the Bronx, Brooklyn, and all over outside of Queens. So he was always in and out at that time.
Right, so a lot of us don't really understand the technical aspect between airbrushing and spray can.
Yeah.
What's your specialty? Can you rock both, or what is your specialty?
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, I started out with spray cans, but I wasn't nice like that because I always had like drips. I didn't know how to control the cans or anything like that. So now it's a little bit easier now with the cans that they have out now. You can take your time, no drips. Like the technology is so far removed from what they had back in the days. So those dudes that was actually doing graffiti back in the days, it was like true masters. They had control of the can. Now, I know a lot of graffiti artists that can't airbrush and a lot of airbrush artists that can't spray paint. So you have to learn both. It just takes time. Like the technique is different, as far as air pressure and applying the paint. That's the only difference.
What's your favorite?
I don't really have a favorite, man. I love both, man. I love holding the can. I love holding the airbrush, man. Especially a brand new airbrush. That's like my favorite thing, man. Like I collect different airbrushes. Like I'm a little different because I'm not stuck to one brand. Like nobody's paying me to use their one brand. So I experiment with anything that'll work for me, basically.
When did you officially become a Shirt King?
That had to be, I think, late 87, 88, around that time. Yeah, it had to be around that time, maybe like closer to 88.
Who was your first celebrity clientele?
I would have to say Belle Biv DeVoe was my first clientele. I got that through Eric B. and Shirt King Fade.
How was it working with them?
It was dope, man. Like them dudes were so cool, see guys that, Belle Biv DeVoe started with New Edition. So to see those guys grow up and then to form that super group, man, was incredible.
They're still rocking today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
It's funny because, many of us who don't meet celebrities think that celebrities are like sort of like not regular people, but when you meet them, they're probably more regular than us.
Yeah, exactly. They just got celebrity and money, you know what I'm saying?
You work with like a lot of rappers. Who's your favorite rapper to work with?
Favorite rapper. I don't know, man. I mean, back in the days, just to like be around like Rakim, like his presence, like that was super dope. I mean, he was real cool.
You've been doing this for a while now. What are the challenges of continuing this art form?
Yeah.
The highs and lows doing this art form when there are constant changes in attitude, in styles, and just people. People are different. So how do you still do this to this day?
Well, it's crazy because people attitudes change over time. Back then the Shirt Kings were like the dominant force in like airbrushing, dealing with celebrities and the media, things of that nature. Even though we had dope airbrush artists back then, definitely. So I'm not saying there weren't other good airbrush artists out there, but I think over time with technology and everything, people getting into the digital age, it kind of waned off, and some people thought it as being ghetto, like and played out. So I wind up going to the digital realm, dealing with Illustrator, Photoshop, different things like that. But I still kept the airbrush on the side. I gave it up for a little bit, but then I started picking it back up because I still had a love for it. But people attitudes, they change back and forth, because there's nothing new under the sun. So, it's coming back to airbrushing now. Like people are starting to love it again. So, and like the other Shirt Kings, they kept doing it. They were doing like, some of them are doing tattoos and graphic design and things of that nature, but they still kept it going. Like Fade kept it going, and the other Shirt Kings, like Nike, he kept it going. And he's also doing like tattoos now. So that still kept us in the public eye, basically.
You're in South Africa.
Yeah, definitely. It's dope. It's dope.
We showed a couple of the big heads, the big sneakerheads, cultural influencers, some of your artwork and some of your clothes.
Yeah.
How did they react to what you're doing?
Yo, it was crazy because they'd never seen it before. They said it was different, like they never seen it before. And like, that's real refreshing because like in the States, there's abundance of everything. Like there's a whole bunch of like great airbrush artists, a bunch of graffiti artists, like hand painters, fine artists, graphic designers, photographers. There's so much in the States that I think people get kind of numb to it. Like, I won't say they don't appreciate the art because they do, but there's so much talent. So to come here and there's nobody doing what I'm doing, that's like so refreshing, man. And that's why I travel also, because I do a lot of traveling around to different countries, and like they haven't experienced what we have in the States, man. So it's so refreshing to see that.
So what you guys been doing for like the last 30-something years, and you're grinding and doing your thing, do you finally believe that what you were doing was worth all the struggle and up and down feelings that you get when doing your artwork?
Yeah, I mean, it's always worth it because it's something that you love. So even though I may go through a struggle or ups and downs, it's something that you love. So you got to keep pushing through. It's like, that's one lesson that I learned from my father, God bless the dead. Like, even till he got older, man, he just kept pushing, man, like for his business and become an entrepreneur. And I think that's where I get that from. Like to keep pushing, like no matter how hard it is, no matter if somebody doesn't respect what you do, it doesn't matter what they think, it's what you think in your heart. That's what keeps me going.
Do you get the same thrill when you see tags in the subways, tags on highways, art in comic books, I don't know, other people's
Art.
logos, and do you still get that thrill now as you did when you were like a teenager?
Yeah, I mean, well, when I was a teenager, it's something new, you know what I'm saying? Because it came out of the 70s and then into the 80s and then the 90s. So it was still new and refreshing. And I still get that same joy from looking at the young people. Because it's like amazing to see these young people doing old styles, like old bubble letters, old block letters and wild style. Like they still keeping that tradition. And then they're taking what they have today in hip hop and they're doing a little something different, but they're still doing what's old. So that's refreshing to see that they're still keeping that tradition without really acknowledging it, but they're just doing it, man. Like it's instinctive for them. So that's dope. And I always get inspiration from comic books. I still go to comic book stores. I still look at toys. I've been looking at anime since I was like a kid, like 13 years old. So, I mean, the art is out there, man. But I try not to get so much now what other people are doing because you get distracted. And a lot of the times I'll see a lot of shirking influence and I'll be like, yo, I already did that already. You know what I'm saying? So I don't get real hyped about it. There's even like copycats out there now, like they're putting out t-shirts with the shirking style, with the glow, with the thick outlines and the rap words on the shirts. Like people are doing that now. And we already did that like 20, 30 years ago, you know what I'm saying? So it's kind of hard to get like influence or like joy from that. You know what I'm saying? But I like what everybody else is doing out there. There's a lot of talent out there.
So how do you deal with the biters?
The bodies, I mean, you just keep pushing it. The originals, Shirt Kings are the pioneers of hip hop fashion for real. I mean, that's not a lie. You know what I'm saying? It's documented in like Word Up magazines and all these other teen hip hop magazines, like The Source. And, it's just all over the place. Like we have that history and that legacy, and I'm a part of that. And I'm proud to be a part of that. So I don't really, like I said before, I don't worry about what everybody else is doing. You know what I'm saying?
What's your goal for 2020 and beyond?
I think more so to come out the shadows, man. It's like I've been in the shadows like a ninja for so long, I haven't really been out there like that. So I think more to get more exposure, do a lot more traveling. Like, I've been overseas. I've been to Bahamas with Champion a couple of years ago. I've been to like Brazil, London, and Paris and different places. So I want to do more traveling, meet new people, get more sponsorships for different companies and, do things like murals, collaborations with other sportswear companies, like things of that nature I would like to do.
How was it working with Champion?
I mean, that was dope, man. Like, they're so heavy into technology of fabrics and design and the hip hop culture. They've been there since I was like a little kid. So to actually work with them was like, man, that was a dope experience, especially having them fly me to the Bahamas for like 5 days. It don't get no better than that. You know what I'm saying? It was like a great experience.
You spoke about working with certain fabrics when you was with Champion.
Yeah.
I still believe the basics when it comes to airbrushing design.
Uh-huh.
What are your basic material that you like to work with when airbrushing?
100% cotton. I like 100% cotton. I love canvas. I love it more so than paper because it takes so well to like what I'm doing. Like hard surfaces, like working on motorcycles and motorcycle helmets, you really have to have control of the airbrush. You really have to have the airbrush precise, clean with the paints and the air pressure because you can destroy a helmet like starting off. So you have to have a lot more control. Whereas working on cotton, canvas is more giving. Even like doing a wall, I like doing walls also as far as hard surfaces, like doing murals, but I prefer starting off with a spray can.
What about denims?
Denim. Denim's the same as working on cotton or canvas, man. It's dope. But I like denim that's bleached. I don't like working on dark denim like that.
There's like in the last, I'll say like in the last 10 years, I could be wrong, but I believe like in the last 10 years, there's been a growth in sneaker customization.
Yeah.
How do you feel about like this growth in sneaker customization?
I always thought like sneaker artists, they have so much patience, man. Like a lot of these guys, they may make it look easy, but to take a paintbrush, man, and just sit there and create a masterpiece and like just have that sneaker looking so sharp, man, that's a different skill set. It's not easy. Like a lot of people may say, oh, they can do that, but it's a different skill set because sneakerheads, they want the work to look good, like it's factory made, like a factory finish. So that takes a different skill set. Like for me, I like just doing graffiti on the sneakers, like Air Force Ones, and calling it a day. I'm not into the intricacies of like, really into that customization like that.
One thing like I get from a lot of people that what's important is loyalty and family. How does that fit into what you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, like, well, you need the loyalty, like when you have a crew so you can work together. Because if you have a crew that breaks apart and they're disloyal, it's going to cause a fraction. It's going to help. Excuse me, it's going to hurt what you're doing because you need that strong team to move forward. Because there's so many artists out there, you need like key people to help you out. Whether it's somebody that's doing your accounting, somebody that's doing your marketing and your sales, you need like people that's going to be loyal to help you to get to another level. Family is what helps you push to that another level. Like I have two beautiful daughters, and I'm inspired to do better. I want my daughters to be proud of me. So that's what I do.
It's funny because with any greatness or any form of greatness, you'll have people who are jealous, envious, or have some kind of evil intent to ruin what the universe is giving you.
Yeah.
In airbrushing, I always felt that it's like this immense competition amongst airbrush artists, which I feel airbrush artists should be more united because there's so much opportunity and money for everyone.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people with that, they have like man, let me see. They have a poverty mindset instead of having an abundance mindset. And I think also that competition stems from being part of hip hop in general because airbrushing is really just a part of like the graffiti culture because a lot of graffiti artists came into doing airbrushing later on in life. So you still have that little competition. And then you, in certain segments of the culture, like in different states, you may have like 5 airbrush in one city going for the same rap artist. So that becomes kind of crazy right there in itself when you have to look at doing different things, you know what I'm saying? But it's like I said, it's like a poverty mindset. That's why I don't mess with a lot of artists like that. You know what I'm saying? I mess with the artists that are cool, doing their thing, doing something different, and I'm always going to support them. 'Cause I'm a fan of art first, you know what I'm saying? So I'm never intimidated by another artist. And I never think like I'm better than another artist because I'm always willing to teach like the youth. I mean, that's the only way to keep the art form moving is by teaching the younger people anyway.
It's funny because we're here in South Africa and the love that we've been getting from like some of the top influencers in the country is kind of bugged out because back home you seem like you don't feel appreciated as much.
Yeah, I won't like I'm appreciated by the younger generation for real, like the up and comers, like the entrepreneurs, like the young people that are starting their own clothing lines. Like they showed me a lot of love, especially like in Atlanta. So I can't front on that part. But like some of the other artists out there, yeah, I do get that, that vibe, like, yo, we ain't messing with what you're doing. But it don't matter because like I said, I got that Shirt King legacy behind me. You know what I'm saying? Like I never really exploited that back in the days because I gave it up for a minute, but I don't even worry about stuff like that. That's like small stuff, man.
I just want to ask you one last question before we move on to Johannesburg. Do you think, like, being here on the African continent, like, inspires you to do the same artwork, but from a different perspective? Maybe you see how colors are used interchangeably, or the different, more earthy kind of tones that's used in African art, as compared to your version of art in the Americas?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of crazy because here in Africa, people are mixing Western art with African art. So it's creating like this different art form. So you'll see like great portraiture, but you'll see like earth tones in the background of tribal prints. So that's like a real dope concept, like combining the West what's going on here in Africa. I like seeing that, you know what I'm saying? So I'm definitely inspired. But I also see that African American culture has come over here as far as the hip hop and their influence as well. So it's like this cross pollination of two different art forms, the African art and African American art and hip hop art in general. And that's super dope, especially with the sneakerheads.
Yeah, that's what I think the goal should be, is like to unite the African and African American to make one powerful union.
Yeah.
Icon, until we hit Johannesburg, that was a good one, man.
Yeah, man. Great interview, yo.
All right, peace.
Peace.